Good evening. This is my second attempt to do a flipped classroom video. We're going to look at Chapter 14, which is titled Education and Religion. This chapter has two sections. Section 1 is titled The Sociology of Education, and Section 2 is The Sociology of Religion. We are going to be focusing on Section 1. Each section has objectives. This one has two, but we're going to be just looking at the first one here, which is explain how the views of functionalist, conflict, and interactionist sociologists differ concerning education. Sociological definition of education is as follows. Education consists of the roles and norms that ensure the transmission of knowledge, values, and patterns of behavior from one generation to the next. Now, in doing this comparison, you could use this graphic organizer. You've seen this before with our videos that we've watched, most recently our Mean Girls one. You don't have to use this, but I just wanted to give that to you as a choice. Now, we're going to do the comparison. We're going to look at the functionalist first. And the functionalists see education, they see schools helping to maintain the stability and smooth operation of society. Teaching knowledge and skills. The basic functions of education is to teach children the knowledge and skills they'll need in the adult world. And so if we look at this passed on from one generation to the next, your parents and your grandparents and even your great-grandparents have had somewhat of an influence, just as the education has, coming from one generation to the next as to how one should behave and what type of education one is going to get as they continue to live in this society. The transmission of culture. For society to survive over time, they must pass on the core values of their culture to the following generations. So schools teach children patriotism, loyalty, and socially acceptable forms of behavior. Think about every day at school when you are asked to stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance, when you are at a sporting event and you have the national anthem that you are asked to stand and pay homage and tribute, for the most part, respect to the flag, loyalty to the country. If someone speaks bad or ill of your country, that you would stand up and defend the country for the most part. Social integration. Education serves to produce a society of individuals who share a common national identity. So even though the society is comprised of different religious, ethnic, and racial groups, when it comes down to it, we are all Americans, and we all identify as being Americans, no matter what our background is. Occupational placement. Education often serves to screen and select the members of society for the work they will do as adults. Schools train students to occupy important positions in society. Based upon tests and evaluations, some students are steered towards college preparatory courses, while others are steered towards vocational courses or non-college programs. We tend to see this a little bit more in the European countries than we'll find here in the United States. And specifically in Ellington, we don't have a big push for students going towards the vocational courses. We have more of a push towards the college preparatory. But we do have those vocational schools that are still available in the community that students could go to, such as Cheney Tech as an example. The conflict perspective. The conflict perspective see the educational system as serving to limit the potential of certain people and groups to gain power and social rewards. Now, both the functionalist perspective and the conflict perspective, from a sociological standpoint, view school as agents of social control. So that's something they have in common. The conflict sociologists view social control as a way to produce unquestioning citizens who accept the basic inequalities of the social system. The conflict perspectives see that they believe that there's a hidden curriculum which involves teaching students a conservative set of values that centers on obedience to authority. The conflict sociologists believe that the goal of the hidden curriculum and the tight social control associated with it is to produce cooperative working adults, workers who will willingly accept the demands of those in power. So if we look at our jobs that we have, for the most part, we listen to the rank and file. If you ask questions because you don't agree with what you've been asked to do, you're seen as not being a good worker. And the idea here is that based upon the education that you get, you aren't to question. Even though it might not be right, you aren't really supposed to question things. And so it's kind of beaten into you from an early stage in life, according to the conflict's perspective. And as a worker, it's the same idea. Don't ask questions. Do as I tell you. And even with your parents, same things come along with that. But the whole idea is that the schools have this hidden curriculum which will hopefully produce cooperative working adults who won't question what is asked of them to do. Tracking. Tracking involves the assignment of students to different types of educational programs, such as general studies, vocational training, and college preparatory studies. Students are assigned tasks based on the basis of intelligence and aptitude test scores, classroom grades, and teacher evaluations. And so when you move from the middle school and from the elementary school to the middle school and from the middle school to the high school, there are some classes that moved at a faster pace. Some classes were a little bit more advanced, and based upon your grades, you could either be pushed up to those, you may have chosen to go into those higher level classes, or you may have been just placed in an average class, not an advanced placement class. And so at the high school, we have the AP classes, we have the honors, and we have the average. Based upon your aptitude, based upon your performance, will make kind of the determination as to what type of class you might be assigned to. Conflict sociologists view tracking as a means by which the wealthy and powerful maintain their positions in society. There are two types of tracking. You have the higher track classes that encourage the development of skills related to critical thinking, problem solving, and creative writing. And these classes tend to be filled with higher income students. You have lower track classes, generally focusing on classroom drills and memorization. They tend to emphasize conforming behavior, cooperation, and getting along with other people. And these classes tend to be filled with low income and minority students. Education and socioeconomic status. Most Americans have long believed that education is the key to social mobility, moving from being poor to a middle class to upper middle class to an upper class. All of that can be achieved through a good quality education. And so educational achievement appears to be tied strongly to one's socioeconomic status. Going to a private school versus a public school may also help with improving your socioeconomic status as well as your social mobility. Not to say that you can't marry somebody wealthy or marry into a wealthy family, but getting yourself a good education, going to a good college or university versus the local community college or the local trade school may impede somewhat of your social mobility. But you could also win the lottery and move up that way. Conflict sociologists argue that the opportunities for educational success and social mobility are distributed unequally. Expectations families have for their children's achievement differ by socioeconomic statuses, by your socioeconomic class. The higher status families are better able than the lower status families to provide a home environment well suited to enrich learning. So if you think back to when you were in elementary school, all the different books that you may have had available to you, the educational toys, the videos, those types of things, all help to enrich your learning and foster your overall knowledge and how well prepared you were for school. Some of you perhaps already knew how to write. Some of you perhaps already knew how to read before you even got into kindergarten. The income of lower status families are often barely enough to provide the basic necessities of life. In this case, you may not have the extra books. You may not have the enrichment opportunities because the basic necessities of life, your food, water, shelter, are more important, and that's basically what your parents or family is working towards making sure that they have. So the idea of having books and sitting down and having your parents read to you, time might not be available, and so that enriched learning is not really there. the interactionist perspective. They say that students' educational achievements and success are shaped in part by the teacher-students interactions. Studies have shown that students tend to fall under the premise of the self-fulfilling prophecy. Now, what is a self-fulfilling prophecy? It's a prediction that leads to behavior that makes the prediction come true. Teachers, through words and actions, let students know what is expected of them, and the students perform according to these expectations. And I'll give you an example of when I was a young man. I was trying to help somebody build something, and I wasn't very good at it. My older brother, and my father were both very good with their hands and building things with tools. And I attempted to help build a fence of some sort. I don't remember exactly why I was using hammer and nails, but I was told that I would make a carpenter's hinder, someone who was not very good. And so I continued to believe that. And for a long time, I wouldn't do anything as far as woodworking and building. It wasn't until I bought my first house and I had Mr. Takis come along and help me, and he showed me, he was patient, he encouraged me to learn to use the tools, and he was positive in correcting when I had made mistakes. And slowly but surely, I have become quite competent with building things. I've gotten to the point where I'm competent enough that I actually have taught other people how to do certain things now that I'm a homeowner, and I feel quite confident that I changed that self-fulfilling prophecy of being somebody that couldn't do stuff based upon what I was told once to being quite successful based upon somebody else giving me the encouragement through that positive interaction. Students who are expected to achieve come to think of themselves as bright and capable because they have been and continue to be treated as bright and capable people. Students not expected to achieve, on the other hand, may come to think of themselves as inferior. And so you may think of people in some of your classes that constantly don't seem to do well. They might be very bright and intelligent people, but because they didn't have success early on in the education in the school, may have ultimately decided that they can't have success and aren't going to be successful, and perhaps have dropped out. This is the end of section 1 that we're going to be using for this flipped classroom video. At this point, you need to log on to my account. You need to go to the quiz tab, click on the quiz tab, and take the quiz that is related to this section. There is a certain time limit on this as far as how long the quiz will be available. If you do not watch this video and then take the quiz, you may end up with a 0 for a quiz grade because you didn't do so. So again, log into the account, click on the quiz tab, and you will find the Chapter 14 Section 1 quiz. Good luck!